Hey, Crib.
Hey, just got off another call. How are you today?
I am figuring out a brand new setup, and it's going to change again because now I got my other mounts. But otherwise, going great. You?
Nice. Doing fine. Doing fine. Excited for this meeting to be done, and then I'm done for the week.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm done until Tuesday, which is nice.
Oh, you have a nice long weekend.
Yeah, they said everybody take the day off today for a recharge day. And of course I have this, and I had a couple other things earlier in the morning.
You can recharge with open source.
Yeah, well,
It's electrifying.
They're going to be disappointed when they see how much time I'm spending on all this. Like 4 hours yesterday.
Oof. Well, I certainly appreciate it, and I know many others do.
Yeah, it's worthwhile work. It's important. Keep the boat pointed the right way. Hello, Jets.
Hello. Keeping boats pointed right way?
That's right. Just got to do a little nudge here and there to make sure we don't drive over the side of the waterfall.
I figure we drive it straight into the coastline.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Hello.
Hey, doing well. Good to see you. Good to see everybody.
Been a while.
Post birthday. Hello.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, happy birthday. Have more.
Hey, I'll take it.
Better than the alternative. Alrighty. Excellent.
Whoops. That was a pull request. Ignore that one. I'll go back to the
I see. Sal, you posted a link to Plan for Improving Education. That's where we're showing up.
Yes, there you go. That's the one, not to pull request I just made, but we're good.
Alrighty.
So this morning I approved the in-flight PRs, and then I made some slight adjustments to 2 and 3 to try to help have more succinct goals. And what I did is I copied what the goal was down to the explanations, and then kind of summarized a little bit so we can tweak the words as desired. And then wherever there was a funding request, I moved that down to the time and resources inside the Git repo.
So I hope this isn't. I hope this isn't out of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I just threw you to the wrong links. I'm going to try to find it. Go ahead.
Okay. Here, let me stall for you. You know, obviously this is we're talking education. I'm a little frazzled from trying to do too many different things simultaneously, so I can't remember what are we trying to do today at this meeting.
So this one is to cover section 3. So we've gotten through curation, and then we covered last night expanding content,
Right.
So new creation, and this one is rewards and incentives.
Okay, so we're going to walk through what we propose to assign to this group and ask the question: do we agree, not agree? And I believe section 1 tossed us a softball.
Yeah.
Oh, they threw in here? Okay.
Yeah, to section 3. Most of them they section 2, but I think they threw one at section 3. Okay. So if they threw it, we should catch it or throw it back. too small.
Yeah, well, the one thing that they threw us was actually just like, so creating badges and stuff, which I think makes sense to go under this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
plus
absolutely.
and this section's pretty short, so.
Okay.
All right, cool.
I see expanding training GitHub with a link. Is that the one you want me to follow? So,
Sorry, I'll give you just, I literally like just got back to my computer 5 minutes ago and was not able to get these up. So I'm still literally getting back into work mode.
not a problem. Not a
But
problem.
if anyone can find the link real quick, I'm trying to close a couple of things down on my computer. If anyone can find the link real quick, just to the rewards and incentives GitHub, send that to me. Hey, there we go. Thank you, C-Rob. We're good. We're good to go.
Thank you. Awesome. So, all right. So if I understand, the goal is to walk through this doc today as a group and ask questions or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Just as we did in the last one, and to identify any immediate next action we should be taking before we head into our next round. And also, it sounds like we're going to do async on here on the OSSF Slack as needed, but mostly every communication should be on GitHub, right? For having a conversation, making an issue if it needs to be. Great. So can everyone see this, read this? We're all good?
Yes.
Cool. So this one's great. It doesn't have too many things that we really have to, well, it's got a couple. So let's just run through these, make sure we're all aware, and then let's get some key action steps in. I'm just going to open this up with editing so we add them right in. So step number one, goal number one, major hubs reflect training and certifications. So for this,
Sal, would you mind zooming that a little further? My eyesight's terrible. My apologies, but I'd like to follow along as you do this.
oops, yeah, let me see if I can get this.
Just you know.
Whoop, that's too much. I'm sorry.
Plus.
There, are we good now?
That is much better. Thank you so much.
All right, excellent. Okay, so starting with the first one, major hubs to reflect certifications. We can spend a minute on this. So the quote unquote hubs, GitHub and GitLab, and the major foundations to reflect certifications and accomplishments of maintainers. So I think, I mean, easy first steps for this is let's go and be clear about what already exists out there. There is a lot of badging already available, but this should be specific to cybersecurity, in which case we're really not that strong. We can get some general OS education, but not cybersecurity. Does anyone?
If I may, two things: cybersecurity, and we're talking training of individuals, not whatever the project does. Because there's a lot of badges that also talk about projects. So I totally agree with you. More clarification, good idea.
Let's see. Yeah. So let's see. List currently available individual contributor badges and recognition from noted sources. I'll make sure to go get those. And do we want these to be only cybersecurity specific or some generalized OS as well, which I can find?
I would say they have to at least include security or cybersecurity in some way. It's okay if they broaden it, you know, because a number of organizations, I mean, including best practices badge, will say security and sustainability. Under the theory, if you can't sustain it, you can't secure it either.
So this is probably something that we're going to be able to do in tandem with the curation group. So naturally, we're going to find the resources that already have badges or recognition of some sort. And we should highlight those and focus with them. Anything else? Yeah.
I would also add that that might actually be very difficult since a lot of the trainings don't have a categorization schema to be able to reflect or filter which badges or other awards or other activities can be reflected. So I know with Credly, I get a lot of badges issued to me from the Linux Foundation for a lot of the things that I do, but there's no kind of categorization associated with them, so I can't link only the security ones on my profile or only the conference ones on my profile. So working with those different organizations that do issue those badges or other certifications to categorize them accordingly and then make that available from like a rendering perspective would be beneficial.
Hmm. Interesting. I interpreted, thank you for saying that, because I interpreted the text written differently than you did. So let me explain how I read this, and that suggests maybe some clarification needed. I read this as, hey, we just want to make sure that if someone has, some badge related to cybersecurity training, that it's from some certain focuses, that it would be included. Not that there'd be a way to list just those, if that makes any sense. If we want to have an ability to filter, I think that would be valuable. But I think we need to clarify if that's what the group is intending. We need to say that, because I was at least interpreting the text differently.
I think this could be a year one, year two difference. So we absolutely need to curate, reach out. And I think this is something where, yeah, we're going to need integration support if we're going to be doing that kind of thing. So that's something that we could do in year two, and only do it with those who we know are maintaining their resources, right? So yeah, let me see.
Can we
need to, but we need to get a developer to assist with some of that integration in year two.
Yeah. Kind of fits with my Stack Overflow agenda as well. We need like an actual integration developer. Okay, so
are these goals just regardless of year, or are we separating out year two to a different part?
If we can put them in, I would just tag it year one, year two.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Why don't we say something? I like Emily's idea. I think it would. If that's a Y2 thing, that's a Y2, make it possible to filter out just those with cybersecurity focus.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that GitHub already has something like this underway because the Linux Foundation has an open request with GitHub and a few other sources to create custom certification and badging schemas to reflect on a maintainer or contributor or anybody with GitHub handles profile and be able to have organizations assign those values. So like those works are already in place. And I understand the need for an integration developer with other activities, but there shouldn't be anything that prohibits us from reaching out to Credly and GitHub and GitLab to make them work to have this happen, because they have a business value associated with reflecting that information, particularly from an enterprise perspective.
So how do we want to word the goal that we would have if we were successful in that in year two?
I think year one, at least, when I look at a contributor, but I think at year two, we'd like to list for a given project to see whether or not its key individuals have cybersecurity training specifically. Specifically for a given project. I'm speaking out loud. That doesn't mean anybody else agrees with me. I'm just, hey, here's a proposal, plus one or minus one.
I think go ahead, Sal.
No, I was going to say all of this is going to be a first pass in a month or so. Like we need to reach out to these and see if they're even really interested in doing this on this timeline, right? So
I left a comment there.
Emily?
So I think you made a comment though that is valuable here, and it kind of goes back to the categorization piece in that there's skill sets which are very particular things. Like on LinkedIn, you have the ability to like recommend skill sets that or attest skill sets of another individual. Something like that is different from like a certification and a badging perspective in that badges and certifications often encompass various skill sets. And in addition to just categorizing things as this is just open source, this one is just security, there are nuanced skills that can be expressed. And maybe that is where we want to kind of showcase some of this. If we can't get like a visual graphic, if it's just like a listing of skills.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay. I think Emily's making a great point. You know, maybe for example, specifically for both of these year one and year two, maybe we should change cybersecurity training to like secure software development. Because cybersecurity training would include, for example, spam awareness training.
Yeah, well, okay, I mean, this is my general pet peeve with cybersecurity all the time. Like, this is a massive service area, right? I only think about like repository level security and everyone else thinks about their browsers, right? So,
Right.
yeah, I think that building out a matrix. So I think we need to work a little bit more in tandem with the section one, because when we're building out this matrix, that's exactly one either column or pillar of this. So yeah, let's make sure, let's see, work with curation team to identify I guess training pathways that align. I don't know. I guess the language here is a little bit vague, but I just want to make sure that we make a note here that when we're building out that educational matrix, it really keeps this in mind. But I think for now we can leave this. We all know where the GitHub is. Let's go for goal 2. Offer financial incentives that are mean tested, including microgrants to maintainers and critical OSS, right? So for this is a massive ask, and this is going to have to really be honed in a little bit. So really the first steps here are, I think we need to do just a little bit more research on what's currently out there and what's not going to be an absolute overlap. For example, sos.dev, I'm working with them right now to get them to actually do it and pay people. So I think aim 1 is going to be identify and align with known, well, identify known incentives within and outside of LF, because there's a lot going on inside of LF that just does not come together. And then aim 2, identify gaps in incentive scheme. How do you spell scheme? I know I'm spelling this wrong.
SCHEME.
Hey, CHEME, thank you. I mean, it's one of my languages. Okay, so
I can now say I actually contributed something.
incentive scheme. So this should be, I think this should be in the first 6 months, or identify gaps in the incentive scheme. And propose, I know, incentives. I don't want to call this
Recommendations.
rewards. Wait, say that again.
Recommendations or solutions or
Yeah. I'm going to put the language here, guaranteed funding. This is something that's becoming more important to me when we're talking about maintainers, is not telling them that there might be a possibility that they'll be funded for the work that they do. Make it upfront what the expectations are, and if they do it, say that that bursary is set aside. So guaranteed
I
funding.
don't think you need to do that here. I mean, are we talking about? I mean, are we talking about scholarship to take a course, or are we talking about scholarship to get a degree?
No, these are not, this is not, there
this
is
is
some
slightly
stuff.
different.
Yeah, so this is really looking at core maintainers. So we're trying to incentivize core maintainers of our most important projects, right? So these are adults, which typically have jobs and they're having to do above and beyond. So in this context, I do want to be like, I want to be certain here because there are some programs going on right now where they've got a web page, maintainers will email, Slack, GitHub them and get no response. We cannot behave that way if we want to fix this problem. So
Okay.
uh,
It seems to me guaranteed response. You're not guaranteeing everybody who shows up and sends a message gets funding.
no, but I want to be very clear. We're dealing in a situation right now that really concerns me. We need to be certain that if we're going to fund them, even if it's $500 or if it's
Right, then
$1,000,
they get paid.
yes, but we're doing it for a specific purpose, right? If you identify and complete all the best practices that are available for OSSF, you've made that project significantly more secure, more usable, more ready for an attack to be remediated. We should be funding those.
I think if we tease out Emily's comment in the chat, that might address this kind of.
Oh, thank you. I've missed the chat. What is the comment?
Define conditions and criteria for eligibility of any new grants. And then I have a follow-on associated with that, coincidentally prompted by David, in that we haven't actually defined what these credentials or badging or education programs actually are. David had mentioned going and getting a degree, but that's not something that I had actually thought about here, particularly since maintainers usually have a full-time job or are doing something in that regard. So we want to make sure that we are clear on what this is actually for. Do we want them to go get a degree, or are we talking about more specific things? Then we should be explicit.
No, there's a whole nother section for the student audience, very specifically here, and I will like protect this with my soul. This is the core maintainers that we need to protect in cybersecurity. None of them are trained, and if we don't train them and get them into best practices, nothing else matters right now. So,
It's just that phrase "guaranteed funding" is triggering expectations that I don't think you mean. I think it's more of a, you're not doing a year over year guarantee into the future. You're saying you do X, I will pay you.
Well, okay, I'm gonna put in for supply chain best practices for.
Okay.
And that's why I think Emily's statement kind of helps. Provide the guardrails for those criteria.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah. Quick nit on formatting. You want dashes in front of M1, M2, M3. Otherwise, it's going to show us one long paragraph.
Thank you. All right. I think this is a reasonable first step. And before we step off this call, we're going to sort of assign these aims as we go, and I'll reformat this a little bit. Are we happy right now with the sort of broad of 3.2? Cool. All right, 3.3, work with jobs boards, suites to reflect training and certifications. I think this fits in a little.
Sites.
Sites, thank you. I was like, suites, all right.
I typed it.
That's perfect. This fits a little bit with the idea of better rendering specific skill sets within cybersecurity. I think.
Yeah. But this is for the job boards like Indeed and LinkedIn instead of for the software repos like hosting sites like GitHub, GitLab.
Emily, quick question. Your resume or profile comment, is that for 3.2?
It's for 3.3.
Okay.
Because right now it talks about when viewing a candidate's resume, usually that's a PDF or a doc or something that's being emailed around.
Yeah, we probably mean profile.
So, but like, then that leads me to the question of what do you put on a resume to reflect those skill sets? Is there a way that we could potentially work with LinkedIn and Indeed to render in a consolidated format so somebody can copy and paste that into their resume to make it a lot easier, particularly if there's an attestation of a skill associated with it or a course behind it. The other thing that I wanted to add on there is accurate and up to date is super subjective from like a titling perspective. I'm not sure if we've established any units of measure for what's considered up to date, let alone accurate in that regard.
I want to remove this language. It just doesn't have any value to the goal or an actionable value.
I'm fine with that. I agree. That's kind of a slippery slope, Emily.
And then resume, perhaps we change that language to profile.
Profile.
Profile, or maybe even personal website. There's a lot of folks in our industry that do maintain their own website, so being able to render that information would be super beneficial as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there is something that's more than just presented. I think what we'd like is presented and verified. It can be presented and verified in the sentence. Because what I'm thinking about is, hey, it says blah, click here. Oh, look, I can verify that. So it's not so much a timeliness, but it's much more of a, like for a CISSP, you should be able to click on it and immediately verify that that person either does or does not have one.
Well, you're going to get that if it comes from the source anyways. Like if you're talking about something from ISC squared, depending on how you have that level of integration, it's just going to show up. Like we're not talking about having someone add it to their profile or add it to their resume. They're going to it's going to be I don't know, like a single, not even single sign-on, like an OIDC or an OAuth kind of workflow where that information is coming from one source, it's being rendered on another, and it's not necessarily something that anybody can manually manipulate.
Right, but that's what I mean by the verified. I really had much with Indeed, but I am on LinkedIn, and you can add stuff on some parts of LinkedIn that are just self-attestations, but other parts are verified. So I think we want them to be one of the things that it verifies. That's all.
Yeah.
And if there's a better way to, A, do you agree? And B, if you agree, is there a better way to say it? Because I may not be saying it well.
Well, I mean, there's two parts here. There's right now leaning on sort of these integration partner options that exist. And then there's the other side where the section 2 is going out and raising partnerships right now. So it may be possible to have those verified pathways of, we know for a fact that they did this training. We know for a fact that they've completed this. I strongly prefer that all trainings end in one verified, at least PR, because otherwise, what a waste of time. But I can't guarantee that. That's just my personal belief. So I think for now, these two identifications, and if y'all, my spelling in English is so bad today.
It's Friday, it's allowed.
That's fine. Yeah. It'll all get worked out eventually. I'm gonna have to step away for a minute. I have a guy here to look at a dead tree in my yard.
Sounds good. We're gonna step to 3.4, I think. Anything else on 3.3? Cool. All right, 3.4, expand existing certifications and badging systems. I think kind of 4.3 is a subpart of 4.4. These are essentially the same.
I'm sorry, I can't see it on the screen. 4.3.
Sorry, 3.4. So
okay.
We just did 3.3, and I think that 3.3 is actually a subpart of 3.4 because we would need to do this before we're able to do any sort of integrations or rendering, if that's what we intend to do.
I agree.
Can you let me see both at the same time? I'm trying
Sorry, there we go.
Oh, huh.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's happened is a gentle creep. I think originally the 3.4 text was, hey, improve certification systems so that other people can integrate it. And then these other goals were, hey, make sure they're integrated.
Yeah, so it goes 3.4, 3.3, and then 3.5 in my view. Well, no, other way around. So 3.4, 3.5, 3.3. So highest priority is actually find out which of these we can verify. Second priority, make sure we're verifying and providing that bump for those core maintainers and developers that we're trying to hire within, make sure those ecosystems are secure, and then continue to make sure that we have a more standardized rendering.
I guess from a time ordering point of view, I think you need 3.4 first,
Yeah,
because you need to have a way for everybody else to find out. And then 3.3 and I guess the 3.2, integrate that in.
3.2 as well. No,
Not 3.2. Is it 3.1? I can't see what you're not showing. So
sorry. I have just my laptop today.
that's
It
fine.
would be
Can you scroll to
3.1.
3.1 then?
It's 3.1, which is major hubs reflect training and
Yeah.
certifications.
Okay, so
So
how do we,
basically, we need to have the badges that other people can access, and then make sure that they're brought in.
all right, so we want to make 3.4, 3.1, and then subpart these other sections, or do we want to come back to that? Let's come back to this reorganization after we've considered a couple of these aims, and then we can integrate it.
Yep.
So I think 3.4 has some reasonable milestones already available in it. These make sense.
The only thing that I would call out is that recognition reward component of it. We've talked about creating a tiered badging program with escalating rewards. What we haven't talked about is the ability for a community or a maintainer or some other organizational body to create on-demand recognition, be outside of certifications and badging. And I kind of see that's what this recognition piece is talking about. I don't necessarily think that's appropriate for this section.
Yeah, there might be somewhere else in this section for more creative solutions. I'm doing exactly that with the security slam. So in order to encourage more security contributions, we're actually asking the maintainers of the projects to vote on their favorite contribution over the slam. So we can recognize contributors that are doing good work. And it's not just PRs, right? It's like, did you have a good issue that you pulled up? Did you have a best practice you put in place? What was your community effort? So more work around that, I think we can absolutely do. But I think, I'm not sure if it goes in this section. If it does, we'll bring it back. So I think for 3.4, I can make a note of that right now. Let's say like rewarding community recognized contributions to open source projects. Everything good for now for 3.4? All right, let's touch 3.5. Highlight badge certified developers to organizations hiring developers.
That seems so related to the other one.
Yeah. I mean, this
Well,
could literally, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, in my mind, it's just a little bit different. There's showcasing all of those skills, certifications, and badges to individuals viewing the profile. But more specifically, we're talking about organizations hiring developers. Is this working with recruitment and job searches to allow organizations to pass in search criteria around our matrix of skills, to optimize those searches and recruitment activities?
Yeah.
I must be dense. I'm not. My apologies. I'm not getting it. I know.
Okay.
I heard the words, and I still not understanding the difference. Can you help me understand?
Sorry, I was gonna say that sometimes when I was working with some recruiters and trying to get them to understand how to find even open source developers, they needed a little bit of training of what that looked like. So this could be related to how do I know or trust, it's a little bit of training for the recruiter.
Training, well, not so much training, but somehow it's a reach out to recruiters then.
Yeah, okay. So there's two different ways to do this, and I strongly prefer one approach, right? One is going and training human beings who forget things and aren't motivated, or you make their life easier and they're grateful and it's automated. So if we prefer, I really think if we take the pathway of year two, rendering the skill sets in a way that's machine readable, then we create a water hole where I can go and verify a pool of security trained contributors. That's my dream of dreams. We don't have that right now. And if we had that, my life would be much easier in trying to hire.
Okay, I'm all for that. That sounds great. Is that not already covered by what we did? That's my problem. Is I'm trying to figure out. There's something different. I'm happy to concede there's something different. I'm just not getting it.
It's discoverability and the lack of discoverability today. So even if we go through the effort of establishing that matrix, making it really easy to pull it in from existing sources, it's about making sure that recruiters or individuals that are hiring know where to look and why they should be looking. And part of that is either a visual highlight on a candidate's profile page, some sort of call out within their resume. It's the allow somebody to search and find.
Thank you. Thank you for expressing it in a way that I actually understood this time. Okay. All right. Now I got it. I'm really not trying to be obtuse here.
I do think this line 48, though, does not go in this section. This is definitely speaking to the professional class, and we cover sort of academic and pre-academic routes later on.
Okay. That probably was what part of my confusion.
Yeah.
I
So
think
You want to move that elsewhere and keep this new clerk, which is probably more.
well, it might stay.
we talked about primary education being a much later year mark, but I don't remember if it was year 2 or beyond year 2.
I think, well, by primary, you're talking about K through 6?
Okay, sorry, secondary. I need more tea.
Okay, thank you.
But I think calling it out here is good, but I believe it might actually be met by some of the other activities we're going on, particularly if they're working in some of the source code repositories and have profiles that it can be reflected there.
Yeah. I think that this aim right now is genuinely covered inside of action statements from section 2. I think that this doesn't quite fix the problem of security research gap. So I'm gonna copy it and remove it from here, but I'm just gonna be very lazy and throw it into the chat in case we do bring it back in. I think that this is the best. This is a long range goal, but I'd say year 1, should be to this aim. Maybe this is more a year 2 goal. Let's leave this as it is and come back to it.
I was just going to suggest, as it's written, that can probably be year 2, but nothing prohibits us in year 1 from going on like an information campaign to let people know that we're working with these organizations and hubs to improve these changes, and here's the kinds of things that you can start hunting for.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, and that goes really well with starting to get that actual training material out, right? So campaign around, I'm just going to label it again. I think it's verified security skill sets. Okay, cool. 3.5, good. All right, 3.6, incentivize maintainers, developers to take courses. Can I relabel this as contributors just on a, leave it? Not a big deal.
I mean, we're focusing only on OSS, which case maybe.
Change developers to contributors.
Yeah.
Please. As a non-developer person, but a major contributor, yeah.
Cool. There, my pet peeve has been taken care of. Now, this has a lot of stuff already in it. Let's parse this out a little bit. So number one, identifying selected maintainers of projects, pay them to take courses, have certifications. So this is upskilling for potential new contributors.
That should come from what, the Securing Critical Projects Working Group, since
So
they've
there's-
identified the
there's two different
projects.
Yeah, okay.
We don't have, top, do you want to say critical or top critical or something like that? Most critical? I mean, top, I think is fine. You don't need to,
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. Plus, like, what critical means to different people is not always an agreement. It's like, how cool is the project, or actually how often is it used globally? We don't agree on that yet, and I have opinions. But we can work with the orgs to identify what their top, I personally, if we want to do this most effectively, let's just say, what are the most utilized open source projects, right? That's what's most critical. Then I want to break this out. So I think that we should break this out into 4 parts. There's year 1 and year 2, and there's also going to be, let's specifically break it out for maintainers and contributors. So let me do that real quick, and let's start sort of resorting these. Y1 and then Y2. And then, so this,
wait a minute. Will they really be that different between maintainers and contributors? I'm
Yeah,
losing the bubble.
it's a very different skill set. I am trying to train maintainers right now, because you have to have an awareness of community level security issues, right? Things like malicious injection. Those are the kind of things that I'm trying to train them now. As a contributor, you don't need to know about malicious injection unless you intend to do it. Totally different training. Let's see, contributors. This is definitely for, I'm going to put this in year 1 right now, but that might be a year 2. I've been asking for that for 2 years, so it might take 2 more. This is interesting. I'm not sure exactly what this one means. Why is this important to me, one pager?
In my mind, that's providing an explanation about why they should be doing it. Why should they go through a certification activity or a badging activity that's going to take away time from actually reviewing PRs and doing feature development?
Okay.
Motivational.
Yeah, align motivation to motivations for cybersecurity training.
And I want to jump up 1 bullet point to scholarships, grants for developers and potential new contributors. I think it's unusual that we don't have that called out for maintainers when, in my opinion, the prioritization should be for those folks with the actual commitment to the main branch or to the publication branch.
Yeah.
You think that should focus on the maintainers?
Well, we're going to need both. We need an army
Yeah.
of new contributors, but let's have a separate bullet in maintainers to allow for them to have grants. And then I think this comes in really well, because then I want to steal all of this and put it here, because there's so much already available that's just not being utilized, that we've claimed to be incentivizing, and we need to make sure that that model really takes action. So I think that this is really interesting, these last 2 ones. Support mentor devs as they take training. That's going to go in the contributor section. Open
I'm wondering
question.
if that's really for, you may need it just everybody section. Because I think that's everyone.
Yeah, I think, I mean,
No
maybe
pro-
the last 3 of these really fit for everyone.
Yeah. What's the O5 OS?
Open source.
Cybersecurity? What?
Sorry, OS is open source. I will take out all of my abbreviations. Just tell me.
Well, no, OSS is fine. I just didn't. OS was the confusing part.
I want to talk about this line 67 about encouraging contributors and maintainers to identify successors. It's not just about identifying successors, it's about providing a contribution ladder or a path. This is something that we've started doing within the CNCF, and it's certainly helpful with establishing some form of structure, but it's more than just identifying successors, it's training them up so the handoff is smooth.
Yeah. So I've reworded that a little bit. 67, I would put in maintainers corner. And also, I'd kind of like to make that a higher priority than it is at the moment. Oops.
Yeah, I mean, it'll affect contributors, but it's the maintainers are the ones that have to actually make that happen. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's really encouraged maintainers to identify.
The other thing that I would add on 68 is it's more than just tickets to conferences as training. It might be
Oh.
a newsletter or other
Stop!
awareness.
What are you doing? There's
I'll
single
take 'em
chart
out.
means that's a higher level. Means that's higher level.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna,
So if you make it single sharp, that's a whole new heading level 1. That's more important than everything else.
It's done. It's over. It's gone. We're good.
Okay.
We're okay.
You can use 4 sharps if you want.
There's none in this. Well, it's okay. We'll keep the format as it is. Yeah.
I'm just trying to eliminate confusion.
So tickets to conferences and training, and what else do we want to include in that section?
I had mentioned just the awareness of what's out there. A lot of folks don't have time or the capability to scrape the internet for all the things that might be relevant to them. So even just providing a service or a newsletter that sends them, hey, here's all the conferences that are coming up. Here's the associated costs. Here's some trainings. Here's the associated costs. This is the skills that you get out of it.
Even and maybe once we're actually up and running, we could influence the LF. Anytime there's an LF sponsored conference, we have a slot that speaks to maintainers and contributors. This is all the education opportunities for you formally at each conference, so that we can kind of walk through some of all the goodness.
Yeah, that's great, but that only hits the people who made it to the conference, which is preaching.
But yeah,
so
we'll need to think about how we're going to communicate all of this, because this is all important stuff. We got to get it.
We probably need to make sure that on the curated content, wherever that centralized portal we were talking about, this needs to be a spot there. And then that's where I also agree we should have these live, but they also need to be async. I think that this will be good. I'm just going to move likely and guarantee it in my language. Okay.
Quick request, line 66. Can that just read maintainers and contributors?
How's that? Well, okay, so I'm going to say
yeah,
community.
I'm a little hesitant about that actually, because community often includes the users.
Well, so this is why, I mean, I don't think that's bad. This is why I put in OS community. So sometimes when I'm coming in to do hygiene support for an open source project, I have to work with the community. Like sometimes the maintainer can help me, sometimes individual contributors will, and sometimes I just have to put it up as an issue with a bunch of like pretty little icons in it so somebody actually reads it, and then I get it fixed. So I do think the ticket stuff fits for everyone at the community level, no matter what way they contribute. And then community absolutely hits that line of support and mentor devs, because it is true that there are devs in this space that are non-PR contributors. Well, they contribute PRs, but non-technical contributors.
Sure.
And in security, those are also super essential. We need them for best practices, right? To like go in and make sure like things as simple as like, hey, can you not disclose a CVE 10 in an open GitHub issue? Like that kind of stuff really need to work on. So,
okay, all right. Community, I think, is much clearer. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. And we can always change it later. I think this is a big one, and it's going to be a lot to eat down, but 3.6, are we happy with the basic sorting of this?
Can we add in a generic swag?
We can.
That's just a way to incentivize on top of all these other things.
Security swag. Oh, do I have ideas about security swag for you? Excellent. Okay, let's go. Oh, yes, let's do the doc. Hey, did everyone get the open source dumpster fire swag from Amazon at last OSS.
What?
Okay, well, I'm gonna go get that very quick as a show and tell while we all read through 3.7.
I am eager to see this.
I love this so much. So it's this like beautiful, can you read it? It says, the strongest steel is forged in the fire of a dumpster. It's got a little fireman on the other side and this dumpster on this side, and it's the best thing I've gotten. So, and I didn't even contribute to a project for this.
Is
So
that a
hey,
challenge coin?
yeah,
Nice.
it is great. Okay, so back on topic because we got 12 minutes left. 3.7, programs outreach and engagement include success criteria. I think this also is kind of coming back to that way of like verification and rendering a little bit. No, this is different. This is actually like pipeline checking, right? So number of people taking courses, maintainer related scorecard.
Right.
At least as written, this is purely metrics.
I think
by
that
the
this,
milestones.
I think that these are good metrics. I honestly think that 3.7 is pretty much fine. And also this line 77 is something I'm actively working on with CNCF right now. So we have a test case for how well that goes.
So I would say that the only thing that's missing based off of the discussions we've had so far is any ability to track the success rate of rendering those skill sets to hiring organizations, like whether or not they're finding any of that useful. How many people are interacting with your verified skill set on LinkedIn versus Indeed? What's the percentage of individuals that have enrolled in that program and have decided to change jobs recently?
Yeah, so we can do this on like I forget what this is called. There's a specific name for it, but it's basically checking in 1 month, 3 month, 6 months, and 9 months post completion. So post completion, hiring assessment. And you should be able to see when you do it that way, that's very cool because if we've got a matrix of cybersecurity skill sets, we see what's being searched for, but not just what's being searched for, what actually gets hired for, which is going to be a strong indicator of what was actually useful training, right? I think that's great. Are we happy with 3.7? Cool. Now 3.8, certifications tracking system. Okay. Is this a non-repeat because this is attempting to create an entirely independent, or is this a little bit of a repeat?
This appears to be a proposal to create our own tool to keep track of all of our work and show, to demonstrate we've had this many learners attain certifications or degrees or whatever.
I would suggest adjusting this to be more of a report oriented thing instead of a tracking system, because that sounds a little creepy. But at the very least, providing a public report around the activities to showcase these kinds of improvements really helps embody the success of this group.
Maybe like some kind of annual report
Mm-hmm.
page, the year in open source education.
Okay. So we've got the one where it's just OS projects who have a maintainer. I think what I'd like to do is just for this end goal, remove the goal being just maintainers with certifications and say identify factors which statistically improve project success.
Agreed. The only other item that I would add here is within the best practices badging, there is a line item that talks about how one of the maintainers is supposed to have security development training. So this should be integrated within that, and I haven't necessarily seen it.
Yeah. I don't know that it goes in 3.8 because these are really, I think that might have to come into another section so we can put it in through year one. But I do want to have that for sure. So let's make sure if you can put the language in the chat, and then we'll make sure that we get that there. For now, 3.8, having this be sort of our larger goal of having that integrated rendering, I think that we can leave this, and that rendering really kind of fits well under 3.8. Cool.
So is line 83, do you want to change tracking to reporting or?
Yeah, certification, education, report, statistical report. There we go. Yeah, I think that'll be good. And that's absolutely necessary. And I think we need to, I mean, we can produce that at the beginning of year two, but we should have that started in year one, right? As a data scientist, I have strong opinions about doing things without any predictive metrics whatsoever.
Big reports take a long time to write.
They do, unless you identify upfront what you're going to be tracking and then continuously track them. We'll see. We'll see what that all ends up looking like. It matters a lot what the integrations are and what information we can pull out. So 3.9 and 3.10. So 3.9 is pretty empty. Expand certification badges and rewards programs.
I would recommend that this become a year two goal and builds on top of the gap identification and the success rate of other activities.
Yeah, okay. And
Stylistically, can you, on line 104, knock the 500K down to the next line, please?
oh, got it. Just like that.
Yep, thank you.
Cool. I identify gap identification and success. I'm gonna call it success signals in this case, to be promoted with rewards programs.
And to identify new areas of education that we may not be aware of today.
Okay, fair enough.
And we really need to do that so that not every single cybersecurity talk has to be still on log4j. I'm upset.
You're going to hear about Log4j next year and the year after.
I know it's 34 to 43% bad downloads globally. I see it every day.
You'll
okay.
see it next year.
Oh,
Give up.
Fine. Okay, at least I'll have a job. All right, 3.10. I think these two are good, and this is definitely going to be a year two, so I think we're solid there.
Okay.
3.4, yeah. So 3.10, expand scholarships, fellowships, grants, and methods for this. So this is something
that's kind of overlapping with earlier goal. I'm sorry, I can't see everything at once.
Yeah, I think this actually more overlaps with section 1, not this section, but this is also very much within this domain. So this is finding, so identify, what needs to happen right now is identify existing scholarships, which we sort of had a discussion about yesterday. And then again, this is expand rewards into gap areas and to gaps of training. And this is absolutely year two, but I think that this is excellent. So we'll be working on that reward structure. That should be really easy to visualize and search. And then from that back end, we can expand that as cybersecurity gets more challenging, not less over time. Love it.
By the way, and I realize we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
Everything here seems to be very much focused on encouraging from the developer or contributor or maintainer, basically supply side. What about demand side? Are we doing anything to encourage organizations to try to hire people with these kinds of badges, accreditations, whatever?
I think that's covered previously
I personally,
Okay, but
within
we,
the outreach efforts associated with increasing the discoverability of some of those skill sets and badging.
Yeah, so I think
okay,
that's 3.5 more reasonably is rendering those skill sets and then helping to assist with a portal or identification that makes them searchable and verified.
okay. I think we need to tweak this goal then. Highlight to organizations to encourage organizations to hire them. To encourage organizations to hire such developer or such, is it really developers? Hire qualified developers. No, not security contributors.
I think it still applies for security contributors as well as developers.
Yeah, hire qualified people.
Um,
If you say security developer, if you say security contributor, for a lot of organizations, that excludes anyone who develops or contributes in any other way.
yeah,
That's the problem we're trying to counter. But
yeah,
don't buy into the wrong argument. Is what I'm hoping for.
yeah. Well, I think that this is a good first step. Unfortunately, we have 1 minute left. This was a massive section for us to get through. So I think there's a couple of these fall into year two, but I just want to make sure for some of these first goals that we actually start taking some action on them. So I am happy. I mean, I think we kind of just need to continue this discussion on Slack and just start identifying what are those badges that we know are verifiable and what organizations might be wanting to work with us for integration. But to continue this conversation with this 1 minute left, do we want to jump this back over to the OSSF Slack and continue that there and make sure that for these sections, we've got everything done for anything that needs to be done in year one.
Thank you
Cool.
so much.
Excellent. I will not see you all there until Monday because it is late here, but I'm going to submit this PR. And please do go take a look at it, fix my typos because they will be in there now.
Totally got it. Understand. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Have a good one.